stuck in a gear. You can hear the engine barely turning over. Once it picks up, it looks like he's got a sequential gearbox problem and couldn't get a lower gear. He could not get the car out of the corner. So all sorts of problems for Mercedes here on the streets of Helsinki, and ironically this is the only team who's been here before. They were here in 95 and 96 in the 2 ITC races, and now it looks like Mercedes is going to lose this race in Helsinki. We already have the second car way down the order after Alexander Wurz crashed into the tyre barrier, and yes, Nannini trying to get back to the pits. It's obviously, I'm sure it's a transmission problem because he cannot get low gears to catch the revs. Once he's up to speed he's okay, but he'll be heading for the pits at the end of this lap. He has 2 gear selection arms in his car. There's the one for pushes the right one forward to change up, he pushes the left hand one forward to change down because he doesn't have the strength in his arm to pull. So Nannini at speed when he's up in the higher gears, but obviously a low gear problem. He cannot get them. I'm sure he'll be in the pits at the end of this lap. I know, he's continuing. He had the opportunity to go in then, but deciding to push on. Maybe the team have decided there's nothing they can do about it, even if he does come in, so tell him to do what he can. Well, let's see if it happens. Yes, again, you see, he comes out, he cannot get the revs, so maybe first or second gear have disappeared. But if he can grab third, he'll be okay. It'll be interesting to see what happens when they come to the pit stops. But it's still McLaren 1-2 here in Helsinki from Luca Badoer in Lotus, and what a big surprise that is. But Badoer should be right up in the order there. We got 25 laps behind us now on this 3-hour street race. So we're going to take a short break, stay on Eurosport to see what happens next. 3 hours, we're just watching the midfield battles between GT2 cars, but McLaren are leading this race 1-2. It's BMW Motorsport McLaren. JJ Leto from Peter Cox, and in third place, an incredible third place, it is Lotus, way ahead of the Porsches, way ahead of the Mercedes, and all sorts of problems for Mercedes. Here's our race leader. Here is JJ Leto, sharing the car in which he won Hockenheim with Steve Soper. Leto started the race. We have not yet had the first pit stops. Here in the pits eventually is Alessandro Nannini, the man we've been seen having all sorts of sequential gearbox problems, and it looks like they're going to try and sort the car out here, but of course there's no garages, that you have open air. They've got to do what they can, try and get him back into the race. The second Mercedes we saw crashed earlier by Alexander Wurz as he was lapping Thomas Boucher for the first time. The two touched and Wurz speared into the tyre wall. It took some time to get the car out. He got it back to the pits. It was nothing worse really than cosmetic damage. It looks like no damage to the suspension or to the radiators, and he is back in the race in the car. He's sharing with Bernd Schneider, but they will not be winning today because they are out of the top 16 at the moment. JJ Leto with 26 laps now completed, leading Peter Cox, coming up to pass Kohreuser. There's Kohreuser, the man who at the moment is in fourth place in GT2. He has got Konrad Porsche, Rook Porsche, and Rook Porsche ahead of him in the order. And there's a change, even as we're saying that, even as we say that, there's a problem for Jean-Pierre Jarier. He has just lost 2 places. Even as we're speaking, he's dropped down behind the Marcos. There's Alessandro Nannini talking to Domingos Piadade, team manager of the AMG Mercedes team, and the team are looking at the car. They might try and get it back out later, but as far as the racing is concerned, they've obviously decided to call it a day. Continue perhaps of a test session like they did in Hockenheim after early problems in the race. So McLaren 1-2 from GBF Benetton Lotus in 3, Rook Porsche, Ralph Kellner's in 4th place, Andrew Gilbert-Scott in 5th, and in 6th place, the second of the Lotuses, the second Benetton car of Andrea Boldrini. So who would have thought that the Italian Lotuses would have been 3rd and 6th in the first hour here at Helsinki. What a fine performance by Franco Miner's team, and how Lotus Racing, the factory team for Britain, must be kicking themselves. They could have had an even higher placing here in Helsinki perhaps. A lot of teams, of course, preparing for the Le Mans 24 hours, and Lotus is amongst those. They want to get all sorts of teething problems they're still having with the new cars sorted out. Porsche not here as a factory team. They want to do the same. Paynos missing the race. They want to get things sorted out. Kramer Porsche, Schubel Porsche, Jabouille Porsche, all those people missing it. And also the Salim Mustangs and the factory Chrysler Vipers missing the GT2 race, as they too all prepare for Le Mans. Some of them, of course, a little bit worried by the concrete walls here at Helsinki. I have to say there's only been one heavily damaging accident throughout the weekend, when Fabien Gillois crashed out on Friday in free training. They got the car rebuilt, but there was an enormous amount of damage to the front of the car. And if they hadn't had a spare car with them, it's unlikely they would have got that car into today's race. Well, Peter Cox there in the second place car we just saw going through the picture. There's Korreuser. And here coming up is Thomas Bicheur. Thomas still at the wheel of his Gulf McLaren. He has dropped down to 13th place. He's 2 laps down. He was spun out in that collision with Alexander Wurz, and obviously called in for check everything in the pits, so he is a little bit perhaps out of sync with the other teams who have yet to stop. We're just up to 50 minutes into the race now, and 30 laps completed by this man, JJ Leto, who is just passing the second of the GT2 Conrad cars, that of Marco Spinelli. This car, in fact, the Spinelli car, we just saw behind him, 1 place ahead of Korreuser's Marcos, and Rook Porsche leading GT2 at the moment. The Rook Porsche car of Bruno Eichmann. He's come through on a charge, and with Jean-Pierre Jarier falling back, dropping back 3 places. For what reason, we do not know. Bruno Eichmann in the car he's sharing with Claudio Hürtgen, and Niamarin leading GT2 from Marcos, from Conrad, from Marcos. And that's all very, very tight in GT2 at the moment. Bicheur's car, Thomas Bicheur at the wheel of the Gulf McLaren, turning into the corner, and it was all just a little bit too close for comfort. Wurz riding with the Gulf McLaren and going into the wall as he was lapping him. JJ Leto in the McLaren, one GTR. Oh, problem here for Conrad Porsche of Michel Ligenet, Tony Seiler, Marco Spinelli. It's pulled off. Has he got a blown turbo, or maybe even worse? It's Marco Spinelli at the wheel. A lot of smoke there from the back of the car. Let's see. Well, it looks more serious than a turbo. If you've got a turbo blown, you normally manage to get back. Now, does this mean there's going to be oil on the circuit? That looks like an engine. Marco Spinelli, the Italian driver of the Conrad 911 GT2, getting out of the car. Now they look at it, just puts his head back in, turn the ignition on, take the key home with you. And he's pulled well off the track. Hopefully there'll be no oil there on the track from that engine problem. Thomas Bicheur having handed over to John Nielsen. John Nielsen now we can see at the wheel of this car. So Nielsen indeed took over when Bicheur came in to repair any damage problems. So John Nielsen trying to make up lost time. He's now into 8th place, and of course their pit stops will be out of sync with everyone else now, having come in a lot earlier after Wurz crashed. Confirmation of GT1 after 33 laps. So McLaren 1-2, Lotus, Porsche, Lotus and McLaren. Well, that last car shown there, of course, not McLaren, Martini and Pescatore at the wheel of a Porsche, and that's Piero Aggi Martini, Christian Pescatore for BMS Secure Italia in 6th place. Well, we're looking at the moment at Andrea Baldrini in the Lotus, about to be lapped by the race leader JJ Leto. Baldrini in 5th place at the moment, and he's now put a lap down, so Leto has lapped everybody except the top 4 cars. Andrea Baldrini showing his car with Mauro Martini. As we said earlier, they had a low-speed misfire throughout the weekend. But the car doing a great job. Might be 1 lap down, but so will Rook Porsche soon at this rate. But Leto must be heading for the pits very soon. Must be. Oh, and Baldrini spins even as we're talking about him. Now, does that mean there is some oil on the track from that Conrad blow we saw earlier? Or was that just a mistake by the Italian? So this Lotus is incredibly smoky anyway throughout qualifying and throughout the race. So as Leto went up over the hill, we suddenly saw Baldrini arriving. Perhaps he was trying to follow Leto, and it was more than the Lotus's rear tyres would take. 55 minutes into the race, so Andrea Baldrini back on the track, no problems, and Peter Cox, of course, will now jump on him as well and put him a lap down on himself. A Rook Porsche in 4th place, McLaren 1-2, this car leading from Peter Cox. GBF Lotus, the car of Luca Badoer, in 3rd place, and the Rook Porsche of Ralph Kellernes, who's still at the wheel, in 4th place. A great job by Ralph, great job for Porsche, who have been lagging a lot. Jari Nurminen in the GT2 Viper. Nice steady job by Jari, the Chamberlain Viper. They're in 15th place overall, and at the moment they are running in 5th place in GT2. 6th, in fact, because 6th place, yes, rather than 5th, because they have the Kraus Motorsport Porsche of Mikael Trunk just in front of them. We don't see him, but this is Jari Nurminen, Formula 3000 driver, and again, like this man, JJ Leto, Finnish hero. So the 2 top Finns here in the race together. And this beautiful Viper, run by Hugh Chamberlain Engineering out of his Hertfordshire base. The only representative of the marque this year. Chrysler came back in 1996 with this fabulous road car, and took on the GT1 cars last year, but they found it was just too much, and they've always insisted its racing program is an extension of its road car program. Perhaps they misjudged the strength of the opposition last year, as the other cars went more and more towards Group C racing. But Chrysler took the brave decision last year to move to GT2. They're having won a lot of fans already. They rewarded in the first race this year when the Reka Vipers took an impressive 1-2 at Hockenheim against Porsche Marcus. That was in the car driven by Philippe Gache and Olivier Beretta. They then came back to Silverstone, and Justin Bell and Tommy Archer took a brilliant GT2 win. So a 1-2, but it's not going to be a Viper win this weekend, because Viper obviously way down the order at the moment. Scraping along the walls. Now, what's the trouble here for Charlie? He is pulling off. He has got a problem with that Rover V8 engine by the looks of it. It's an electrical problem. The car suddenly slowed, suddenly pulled off to one side. A great shame for this very underfunded little team who are hoping to do all the races this year, and it's a car that never retires, so it has to be said. One sometimes speaks too soon. Well, pit stop time. Andrea Baldrini out, Mauro Martini in with the GBF Lotus. Mauro Martini, of course, long time a Toyota driver, driving of the late and much missed Jeff Krosnoff in Japanese sports car racing. Almost won Le Mans. Driving for Toyota. One of those great battles that we saw when he was showing the car with Eddie Irvine. GBF team fettling the Lotus, refueling. No work allowed to be done while you're refueling. Tamara finishing second in 1994 at Le Mans for Toyota. Always drove with his friend American Jeff Krosnoff in Jeff, of course, so tragically killed in Toronto last year in the IndyCar race. His Italian teammate and friend continuing racing now with the GBF Lotus team. There's Andrea Boldrini. Being asked presumably about that quick spin as JJ continues to lead and upping the average speed of the race now to 119. Of course, it was 116 earlier. That had included a 3-lap caution period. Now the average speed starts to build up again as he continues. Now we saw this at Silverstone, how the McLarens, the Spitzer McLarens, could eke out the fuel a little bit longer. Just to avoid any confusion at the moment, there is the order, 1, 2, 3, still the same, but Ralph Kellner's in fourth, the same, and now Conrad, Baldi and Angelelli, Mario Baldi at the wheel, up into 5th place in the Porsche. Overhead view of the port of Helsinki on this 3.18 kilometre street circuit, and we're looking now at the second of the Lotuses. In fact, this car, the car of Luca Badoer, he is handing over to Mimo Schiattarella, and this car was in 3rd place when it came into the pits. It's just let the Rook Porsche of Ralph Kellner through into 3rd. Schiattarella takes the car from his Italian teammate, GBF, Team Lotus, Benetton sponsored. Engines prepared, Armando Ferrieri, and the whole team under the control of Franco Miners, the man who used to run Ferrari Club Italia, and the man who was responsible really for Ferrari's F40 program in the BPR series in 1995 and 96, working hand in hand with Guido Dindo. For Ferrari, now read Lotus, and they've become very much Italian Lotuses with these turbocharged V8 engines, twin-turbo V8s. They've got 3.5 litres and about 580 horsepower. Out comes Mimo Schiattarelli into the race. And we're still waiting for our race leaders to come in. Luca Badoer there. Being congratulated on his drive, and what a fine drive that was. He must be very, very pleased with himself, and so he should be. So on these anachronisms, the all-Italian Lotus team. JJ Leto still leading for BMW Motorsport. He'll be handing over to Steve Soper perhaps in a while. Not necessarily, he may stay in for a double shift. With 2 drivers in 3 hours though, it makes everything a little bit awkward for planning. Well, in comes the unhappy, not in comes, still in is the unhappy number 10 Mercedes of Nannini. Klaus Ludwig hasn't even had the chance to drive it yet. You can see there they're working on the transmission at the back, so I would suggest it was a sequential problem, but they're certainly out of the race completely. They'll try and get the car fixed so they can have some testing experience again, just as they did in Hockenheim. JJ Leto there, lifting the wheel again over the brows here on this street circuit. A good time to just have a quick look at the championship classifications. As they went into this race, Leto and Soper leading on 14 points from Cox and Rivaglia on 10 points. Pioni Raffanel, 9 points for Gulf McLaren. Jean-Marc Gounon sharing 6 points with Bernd Schneider and Alex van der Wertz. Hans took Terry Batson, who are missing this race this weekend, a 5th on 5 points, and Thomas Picheur and John Nielsen have got 4 points. Just one more than their Gulf teammates, Ray Bellum and Andrew Gilbert-Scott. Ray not driving this weekend, he stood down to let Jean-Marc Gounon and Pioni Raffanel get points with his teammate Andrew Gilbert-Scott, while Gounon's car is still repaired after that massive accident at Silverstone in the warm-up, which put the French driver in hospital with concussion. Happily, Jean-Marc fine now, no ill effects from that massive accident when he hit the bridge at Silverstone in the wet morning warm-up. And here Andrew Gilbert-Scott, who we've already seen make his pit stop and refuel, about to be gobbled up by JJ Leto. JJ, who has not yet made his pit stop. It's still a McLaren Motorsport 1-2 under Charlie Lamb. The man, if you didn't catch it earlier this morning, was this morning announced as BMW's race director with immediate effect. Through he goes past Andrew Gilbert-Scott, and that is just a mark perhaps of how much more efficient the Schnitzer Run cars are. He's on old tyres, he's got a low fuel load, mind you, but Gilbert-Scott has fresh tyres on. He's had his first stop, and perhaps just the lightness, the weight difference without the fuel load, making that much difference to their speeds. JJ on a charge. To get as much distance as possible over his teammate Peter Cox. Cox will be handing over to Roberto Ravaglia. Here he comes. Right behind Stefano Butterio, the Italian driving the Carlo Agustin Porsche GT2 Evolution, which makes it a GT1 car. Yes, Ludwig on board, his distinctive white and blue helmet. So he's just looking for some gears there. Slightly different system for Ludwig in the car. He only needs to use the first of the gear levers, so it's push in to go up, pull back to change down. As Nannini needs the two. They have to flick a switch to isolate the second lever. And Ralph Kellner's at the moment in third place. He's about to be lapped by our race leader, so it really is a BMW Motorsport blitzkrieg here in Helsinki in 1997. Third round of the FIA GT Championship on this 3.18 kilometer street circuit, previously home to ITC Racing. Radu Nurminen in the Chamberlain car. He's made his stop, handing over to his teammate Pertti Leivinen. As JJ Leto prepares to deliver the two coups de grace to third place, Ralph Kellner's. Oh, someone's mirror off. We didn't see who it was. Black mirror could be that of Andrew Gilbert-Scott off the Gulf McLaren. And JJ Leto laps the third place car to put BMW Motorsport one clear lap of the whole field here now in Helsinki. Jari Nurminen there, done a good job in the Chrysler. He's going to let his Finnish teammate do the job now for the next hour or so. Pertti Leivinen and JJ still not stopping for fuel. They are eking this fuel out incredibly. Now 1 hour and 11 minutes, and surely he must be coming in now. Problems for Lotus? No problems, just a nice flame out there in the V8 twin turbo. Somewhere on the circuit is a driver with only one mirror. That still doesn't stop. JJ continuing this. 41 laps completed. Now 1 hour and 12 minutes into the race. Manabaldi in fourth place in the Conrad Porsche. And a very good job is Mauro with Franz Conrad and Max Galeli. Franz drove his car back with Bob Wallach in Silverstone, and they're showing the car together with Mauro at the Le Mans 24 Hours. Gerald Reed in the Proton competition, 911 GT2 coming in, handing over presumably to Patrick Vuillaume. Yes, Patrick Vuillaume, there's the PV on the helmet. A bit of damage in the front corner of the car there, the team's looking at. As Baldi comes through past Pertti Leibenen, he's now in the Chamberlain car, 1 lap down of course, and Peter Cox and JJ Leto. Really the class of the field here this weekend. They've really done the work. They'll be handing over respectively to Steve Soper and Roberto Ravaglia. All they've got to do is keep the cars where their teammates have put them. So Baldi at the moment about 10 seconds down on Ralph Culliners in the Brook Porsche, and there after 46 laps, confirmation of the front three. It's JJ Leto from Peter Cox from Rook Porsche. We'll be back after the break. We've seen one of the Conrad Porsches out of the race with engine failure. We've seen the little Morgan stop. We don't know what the problem was. It may be electronic. He seemed to have a big problem with getting any power out of the car. We saw a major problem for Alexander Wirtz, who was in second place. Crashed his Mercedes into a tyre wall after colliding with Thomas Bischer. So he and Bernd Schneider way down the order now. And we've also seen Alessandro Nannini and Klaus Ludwig in all sorts of troubles, sequential gearbox troubles, it would appear to be from where we're sitting. And they have lost 10 laps now, trying to sort that out. Oh, very, very tight there. That was a bit of a push and shove there past the GT2 car. I think JJ Leto teaching a lesson. There's Peter Cox. So Cox now has JJ Leto in sight as he goes past Mima Sciatarelli. Peter Cox, the man who won in Silverstone with Roberto Ravaglia, but both these BMW cars have got to hand over to their co-drivers. They've got to refuel fairly soon. They're pushing very, very hard. There's Leto, and here is Cox coming up with lights ablaze. He is just passing the GT2 leading Rook Porsche of Bruno Eichmann. They can go for about an hour and a half, the GT2 cars, without refueling, but to have this long, 1 hour and 21 minutes without refueling for a GT1 car is almost unheard of. There's Roberto Ravaglia. Now, Roberto Ravaglia is going to be 40 years old tomorrow morning on Monday. Wouldn't this be a wonderful birthday present if they can pull off the win? Roberto obviously not in a hurry yet. They obviously decided they can go further. He's not got his balaclava on, he's not got his helmet on, and the Italian driver standing watching the TV monitors, watching his teammates' progress. So I think we're probably 2 or 3 laps away yet from a stop, because he's not in any sort of hurry. Now it's the strategy of Lamb that they go for an hour and a half, so they only have to do 1 pit stop. It's a 3-hour race. If they've managed to plan that, then they will be even further ahead of the opposition. Cox is very, very close now. You can see that gap is coming down every lap. It was 2.007 seconds as they cross the line. And he has Leto in his sights. Will he be allowed to pass? Obviously, the Cox car is not scheduled to come in yet, because Roberto Ravaglia, as we saw, is not yet prepared to take over. He hasn't got his helmet on. And Cox really pushing now. Here they come, the 2 BMW Motorsport FIA McLaren F1 GTRs. These cars pushing out 600 horsepower, maybe a little more with the BMW Magic worked on them, factory engines.